Welcome back to Code Hive, the place where we make it work, make it right, and make it fast. So in today's video, I actually want to talk about stored procedures in SQL Server Management Studio. So what is a stored procedure? Right, so a stored procedure is prepared SQL code that you can save and reuse repeatedly, right? So you create a procedure and you can use it anytime that you want to actually use it. That way you can avoid writing the same SQL query twice, 3 times, 4 times, right? So that is what a procedure is for, is code that you're going to use when you want to avoid writing the same SQL query twice. Okay, so the first one that I want us to actually talk about is a stored procedure with no parameters, right? So you can create a stored procedure without parameters by simply defining the procedure with an empty parameter list. So if you know Java and C#, you would know that parameters is something that you're taking in, right? It's values that you're taking in. You're creating a variable that you're taking into a specific method, for example. So a stored procedure with no parameters, the syntax looks just like that. So you create statement and then procedure, and then you name your procedure. So the procedure name as select all from a specific table. So basically this is the theory on the first one, right? The procedure with no parameters. So we will look at an example just now. Okay, so let us look at an example. So the table that I will be using for this example where I talk about a stored procedure with no parameter is I'm going to use my employees table, right? So if I just make sure that I have selected my database, okay, so like the syntax was saying, the first thing that you need to say is create. So that is your create statement, right? So create, what am I creating? I'm creating a procedure. What is the name of the procedure? So I want to name this procedure list of employees, for example. Okay, so that is my procedure name. And then the next thing that you have is the as statement. Then after that comes your select statement. So select, what am I selecting? I want everything, right, from my employees table. Okay, so basically that's just that in terms of a procedure that has no parameters. So let me quickly go through it again. So create procedure, and then it's the name of your procedure. As statement, select everything from the employees table. So you are creating a procedure that will select everything from the employees table. There's no parameters, there's nothing. You're just doing that. Okay, so that is basically for creating the procedure. Okay, so if we just execute that, we should have that completed successfully. But now, how do you view what's in the procedure? How do you view the stuff that's in that procedure? So you need to execute. So executing the procedure. Okay, so executing, you're going to say EXEC, right? Which is basically just the first 4 letters of the word execute. So EXEC and then your procedure name. So what is my procedure name? My procedure name is list of employees. So that's just that. So if I select that statement and I execute, I should be able to see my result. I should be able to see my procedure. So this is the most basic example of a procedure that does not take in any parameters. So I've shown you how to create it as well as how to execute. Okay, so the next one that we are going to be looking at is a stored procedure with one parameter. Right. So in order to create a stored procedure with one parameter, you need to define the parameter in the procedures parameter list. So it's just like creating a method in Java, right? You have your public, static, and then your method name or void, whatever you use, right? And then your method name. And then next to the method name in brackets, you have your parameter. So you having all the variables or the parameters that you want that method to take in, right? So in this case, this is the syntax on how to create a stored procedure with one parameter. So you will have your create procedure keyword, and then your procedure name, and then you're going to have at, right, and then your parameter, so whatever you want to call your parameter. So at, obviously you have to name it in terms of what the parameter is all about. Like if you want to collect maybe employee ID, so you'll have at employee ID, which is your parameter, and then you'll have your parameter data type. Okay, as select all from the table, and then the condition, right? So where the condition is equals to the parameter. So if we had employee ID, so you'd say that, okay, select everything from this, from the table where the employee ID in the table is equals to the employee ID, which is the parameter, right? So it is kind of confusing now that we're just looking at the theory, but once I explain to you the example, it will make more sense, right? So let us quickly look at an example on how to create a stored procedure that contains one parameter. Okay, so let us look at an example on a stored procedure that takes in one parameter. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do, so this is creating the procedure. Okay, so create, then procedure, and then your procedure name. So I'm going to still be using the employees table, right? So create procedure, and let me call it employees selection. Employee selection. Okay, so now my parameter. Okay, so the first, okay, well, we're working with one parameter, right? And I want to take in the employee surname. So I'm taking in the employee surname as a parameter. Okay, and then the data type. Okay, and then the length. Okay, so create procedure, name of the procedure, parameter, parameter data type. Okay, as select everything from where? From my employees table. Okay, where, so my condition now. So where the employee surname, right, in the employees table is equals to the parameter. So that's my condition. So I'm creating a procedure, I'm calling it employee selection. And I'm taking in a parameter of employee surname, right? So my parameter is emp surname, and that's the data type. As select everything from the employees table, where the employee surname in the employees table is equals to the variable, the parameter that I'm taking in. Okay, so if I execute that, then it should execute the procedure. Okay, so now executing the procedure. Okay, so like I said before, exec, but now, okay, so you have your procedure name. So it's employee selection. Okay, but because we see now that, okay, it's erroring out over there. Why is it giving us an error? Because this procedure contains a parameter. So I cannot execute this without specifying the parameter, basically. So the parameter is at emp surname, right? But I want to find the employee where the surname is equals to Smith. And the error should go away. So let me explain this part. So you are executing, right, your procedure. But because you're taking in a parameter, you have to assign it to something. So if you can see in my table over there, I have two employees with the surname of Smith. So what this is actually doing, right, is it's going to execute my procedure and only display the employees that have the surname of Smith. And that's what that parameter is for. So you're assigning something to that parameter, and that parameter will be used here to find all the employees that have that specific surname that you've assigned to the parameter. Okay, so if I execute, I should be able to see all the employees with the surname Smith. So if I change that and I change it to Willis, for example, right? And I execute that part, you can see that it will only display the employees with the surname Willis. So that is how you use and how you create a stored procedure that takes in one parameter. So it's not like the other one where it didn't have any parameters, where you just display everything, right? You display all the employees. In this case, because you have a parameter that takes in the employee's surname, it will only display the employees from that table with that specific surname. So this could have easily been ID. So you could have used emp ID, employee ID over there. And then you execute where the employee ID is equals to emp 103, for example. So that is the difference between this procedure that is taking in one parameter and the other procedure that we talked about that takes in no parameters.